Thanks to the friends who supported the channel financially and who watch the ads without skipping, as this helps the channel financially. And before we start, don't forget to like and write a comment. There's always someone who moves as soon as the round ends. It was the bodyguard and Sang Cheol, and as usual, he looked for Heavenly Demon's hotel room as soon as he woke up in reality, and said, "President." Heavenly Demon narrowed his eyes at his appearance, and he said to himself, "A subordinate entering the president's room at will, and without even being called?" Then Heavenly Demon said to him, "And director, what's the reason for always coming like this? I didn't give you the master key for this." The bodyguard said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He said, "It's nothing to apologize for, but what brings you here today?" Unlike usual, Heavenly Demon was curious to see the bodyguard's excited expression, and he said to himself, what good news could it be? Has he finally started something with Seo Aaron? That would be great, to grab and hold on to it this time. But contrary to expectations, what came out of the bodyguard's mouth was disappointing news. As he said, "I've reached level 40. I've finally advanced to expert rank." Heavenly Demon said, "Ah, is that so? Good for you, Director An. You're killing your superior." He said, "Eh? I'm sorry." Heavenly Demon said, "Don't even say sorry. I know you're not doing this on purpose." Then Heavenly Demon turned away bitterly, and An Sang Cheol belatedly realized his thoughtlessness. He really hadn't considered this. And he added, "I'm sorry. I was too happy and forgot to consider the president's feelings." Heavenly Demon said, "I wish I could quickly reach level 42, but I'm only level 38. How is this possible?" And he vented his frustrations and said recently, "I even lost my rank for the first time." Well, lost isn't quite right since it sounds petty. I should say I didn't rise, and I thought I could at least make it to the second or third place, excluding the first place held by a monster at level 80 hogging it all. But I was pushed down by a priest and a buffer. One of them is my fiancé, but still. Then Heavenly Demon chuckled bitterly and added, "Not receiving the second or third place rewards for once feels strange. I thought I was at the lead. But suddenly, I'm falling behind to even my employees in levels." The bodyguard said, Don't be disheartened, President. It's only a 2-level difference between us, and you have a special and strong job. You'll regain your rank soon." He inquired, "Is that so? If I join Black Scythe's area, will there really be a chance to take back even the first place?" The bodyguard held back his words. Now, whatever he would say wouldn't comfort him. It would only stir up more trouble. Then Heavenly Demon inquired, "What's Seo Aaron's level?" He replied, "I think I heard she's at 37. Heavenly Demon said, "Is that so? At least I'm higher than Seo Aaron. I'm not too pleased, though." Then he sighed and asked, "The prophet is still alive, right?" The bodyguard replied, "Yes, I confirmed it on the way here." He said, "I'd like to know the information for the 9th round sooner, to analyze where I can quickly level up." The bodyguard inquired, "Should I call now and ask him to come?" Heavenly Demon said, "What blasphemy? I told you to treat the prophet like a god. If anything, think of him as a messenger delivering the divine oracle. He might be young, but he's more cunning and quick-witted than you think. Don't do anything to make him dislike us. Think and act in such a way that we can both win-win. We're the ones who need the prophet, not the way around." He said, "Ah, understood. I'll be careful with my words and actions from now on." Heavenly Demon was reminiscing Ryu, who had praised him in front of his father, and he said to himself, "Is it humility or does he lack greed? It's hard to tell." But suddenly, Heavenly Demon's phone vibrated. He inquired, "Who could it be at this hour?" Then he looked towards his phone in surprise and quickly answered in English. "Christine, what's up?" she said. "I just boarded a plane to Incheon Airport." He inquired, "Excuse me?" Suddenly, she replied, "I've confirmed that most of the information you gave me about the 8th round is true. Of course, Ryu's prophecies have never been wrong. And thanks to him, Heavenly Demon gained a lot of experience points in the human guild during the 8th round. That's why he could guess what was going on." Then she added, "I want to meet your business partner as soon as possible. As expected, anyone who hears the oracle must seek out the prophet. And as the saying goes, there are those who have never heard a prophecy, but no one who has heard it only once." Heavenly Demon said, "Understood, Christine. I'll arrange a meeting." She said, "Thank you." It was the first time Heavenly Demon had received a thank you from his fiancée. The next day, Ryu and Heavenly Demon met in Player Place. In fact, the growth of the so-called PP market, Player Place, was alarmingly steep. Because almost every player worldwide uses it, then Heavenly Demon said, "The problem is that it's decreasing by half every month, as the number of users drops by more than half each month. But the growth of PP doesn't seem to slow down. How is that possible?" Ryu replied, "Because there's a consignment system in PP, and the consignment system means that PP company sells items on behalf of the players. In other words, if the seller sends the item to the company via courier, PP sells it and gives the profit minus the commission to the seller, and if something happens to the seller, the proceeds are promised to be deposited into the family's account. With this way, even if the selling player dies, the item can still be sold for profit. So sellers are satisfied as they can ensure their families receive the proceeds of the item in case of any mishap." Ryu added, "A win-win system is the consignment selling system, and even if the number of users decreases, the company's revenue will not fall." Heavenly Demon inquired why. Ryu replied, "As rounds progress, the level and value of items will naturally increase. Eventually, PP will become a site for VVIP users, even if only a handful remain. So, there's no need to worry about going bankrupt." Heavenly Demon said, "Ha, I was worrying over nothing," and he felt somewhat relieved after hearing Ryu Min's explanation. In fact, he had invited Ryu to share his concerns about the company possibly going bankrupt as the number of rounds decreased and users dropped. And as it turns out, his worries were unfounded, and the prophet understood the company better than he did, a businessman. Then Ryu said to himself, "But eventually it'll crash and burn anyway, as after the 15th round, the number of users will plummet. Not a gradual curve, but a cliff-like drop. And when the number of users drops to 2 digits, bankruptcy is inevitable, but by then, of course, I'll have to wash my hands of it. For now, milk it for all it's worth." Ryu kept that fact to himself, as there was no need to cause unnecessary worry. Then Heavenly Demon laughed and said, "Indeed, it was wise to consult the prophet. Otherwise, I might have been fretting alone over various worries." Watching, Ryu noticed a slight change in Heavenly Demon's laughter, and Ryu said to himself, "His pretense towards me has lessened somewhat." In fact, Heavenly Demon always wore a mask of business when dealing with him, but today, for some reason, he seemed to be lowering his guard. Ryu said to himself, "Perhaps me praising him in front of the chairman had an effect." Reading his inner thought, it seemed that was the moment he let down his guard, and Ryu said to himself, "Well, he didn't call me here to ask about the company's fate, I'm sure." Then Ryu kept an eye on Heavenly Demon, and through the rune of future, he could see 7 seconds into the future. Then Heavenly Demon said, Prophet, the reason I've invited you here today is actually for something else." Ryu said, "I know." Heavenly Demon inquired, "Excuse me?" Ryu said, "You don't need to say it. Guests will arrive soon." Right after Ryu's words, the office door opened, and 2 guests from the United States entered. It was Christine and Jeffrey. Heavenly Demon looked back and forth between Ryu Min and Christine in surprise. Then Christine said, "Hello, Mr. Ryu Min, or should I call you Prophet? Which do you prefer?" At Christine's words, Ryu shrugged his shoulders and said, "Whichever you're comfortable with." She added, "Do you have a moment to talk?" "Actually, not for a moment, but for a bit longer." Ryu said, "Yes, please have a seat, Christine." With Ryu's permission, Christine sat down opposite him, and Jeffrey stood beside them as if guarding the spot. Ryu's gaze naturally turned towards him, and asked, "Aren't you going to sit as well?" Jeffrey spoke brusquely. "I'm fine standing." But Christine raised an eyebrow and subtly hinted at him. "Jeffrey, didn't we agree not to make the prophet uncomfortable?" Reading the hint in her gaze, Jeffrey cleared his throat and corrected himself, and said, "If it's all right, then I'll sit." Ryu smiled reassuringly and said, "Of course. Please make yourself comfortable. There's no need to be on guard." Though Jeffrey's expression remained stiff, he was someone who naturally didn't smile much in front of others. Perhaps thinking the atmosphere had become awkward, Christine quickly introduced Jeffrey, and said, "This is Jeffrey, our synagogue's deacon. He's practically family, having been with my father since childhood." Ryu said, "Is that so?" In fact, Ryu had already recognized him, the assassin who had been tailing him on Nathan's orders last time. Ryu extended his hand and said, "Nice to meet you for the first time. My name is Ryu Min." Technically, it wasn't their first meeting, but Ryu mentioned it on purpose. It was to gauge the reaction, but Jeffrey, unexpectedly, shook his hand with an uncomfortable expression and said, "Jeffrey." Ryu said to himself, seeing him uncomfortable, he must have some conscience. Upon probing his inner thoughts, he didn't seem like a bad person. More than anything, his feelings towards Christine were unexpected, but he didn't mention it. But Ryu didn't want to ruin the mood here either. Then he inquired, "What brings you to Korea, Christine? A date with President Ma, perhaps?" She replied, "Well, that wouldn't be bad, but I came to see you, Ryu Min." Ryu inquired, "Me?"